Controversy surrounding Boeing at the moment is at its absolute peak, with issues to do with their planes, ex-executives coming out to say that yes, there are issues that Boeing are not willing to fix, and then a whistleblower from within Boeing suddenly being found dead. And it's absolutely insane. The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous, and we're going to deep dive into the whole thing today. So, starting with what's been going on with Boeing over the past few months. So, most of you will probably remember it made nationwide news and international news as well, as a Boeing flight from Alaska Airlines, as a Boeing 737 MAX 9 plane door blew out mid-air, which forced an emergency landing and passengers to start suing. So this was the footage that absolutely went everywhere regarding this blowout. Take a look at this.
There was thankfully no one seated near the window. Yeah, they just said. I sit there, I thought we were bored. Yeah, I thought we were too.
Absolutely horrifying scenes as mid-air, a door flies off the hinges, just leaving a gaping hole in the side of the plane, causing absolute mayhem mid-air. And, you know, this whole thing was apparently supposed to be, you know, it was completely avoidable. And then, you know, the controversies piled up with more and more issues being found on Boeing planes after investigations and things like this. But an ex-Boeing executive, MAX airplane is definitely not safe. That was the quoted words from this News Nation article. So we're going to take a little look at this as well, because it really shines a lot of light on, you know, executives, ex-executives at Boeing, you know, saying this is what's happening, this is not okay, and it was completely avoidable. Take a look at this, because it shines so much light on a very dire situation.
Passengers are still wary of flying on the Boeing 737 MAX 9 airliners after a panel blew out on an Alaska Airlines plane in the middle of a flight last month, forcing an emergency landing. Fortunately, there were no major injuries, but air safety advocates say this could have been so much worse. As airlines continue to utilize the MAX 9s, what needs to be done to ensure safety? For that, we are joined by Ed Pearson, a former Boeing senior manager and executive director of the Foundation for Aviation Safety, and Mark Lindquist, attorney for passengers who were on that flight who are now suing Alaska Air and Boeing. Gentlemen, appreciate you both being here. And Ed, I want to start with you. You are a former Boeing manager. You say you will not fly on this plane. You wouldn't recommend it. Why is that?
Well, thanks for having me. And the reason I wouldn't fly this plane is, unfortunately, I was in the factory and I watched how it was built. And even though they're tremendous employees in the factory, the pressure that they were under to get airplanes out the door just led to tons of mistakes. And we've seen a lot of issues with the airplane in service, not just the Alaska accident. So those are the reasons that I can't advise anybody to fly that plane right now.
For how many years have you noticed these sorts of mistakes? And do you believe that these mistakes could be life-threatening?
Obviously, that's alarming scenes in itself, when you've got an ex-executive of Boeing saying he would not, absolutely not, fly a MAX airplane. That should tell you everything that you need to know.
I definitely think these mistakes can be life-threatening. And for me, I saw these mistakes occurring back in 2017. We started having engines delivered late to the factory, and that led to a cascading effect. And quite honestly, for the last 5 years, we've really seen no improvement or very little improvement at all. They continue to talk about, you know, the number of planes they're going to produce every month. They continue to have employees work ridiculously long hours. They don't have the training, adequate training. There's lots of issues, and unfortunately, you know, they just, you know, changed the lipstick on the pig, and they didn't really get to the root causes of any of these issues.
Ed, what went through your mind when you heard that this happened and saw the video, saw that gaping hole?
Well, I vividly remember it because I was sitting at a basketball game with a friend of mine who works with me, and he's an aerospace engineer, and we just heard the news at the same time, and we both thought, oh my God, this must have been so traumatic for the passengers and the crew. In the military, we call those kinds of things explosive decompression because it happens suddenly and violently. I don't know where they came up with the term rapid decompression, but we use that phrase to describe something that took, a depressurization event that occurs over time. And, we were just all thankful that nobody died. I mean, that was, had to have been terrifying. And, the crew obviously did a great job, but they never should have faced that situation.
Yeah. Speaking of this, Mark, let's turn to you here. How many passengers are currently involved in this lawsuit, and how have they described the experience and the aftermath from this?
Well, I represent 25 passengers, and a variety of individuals had a variety of reactions and injuries, everything from hearing damage to anxiety to sleeplessness to, of course, fear of flying. PTSD. Different people reacted differently, but I think a common theme here is most people thought that plane was going down. If you're sitting on a plane and suddenly there's a gaping hole in the fuselage and air masks are dropping, air's rushing around you, you're depressurizing rapidly. In the movies, that plane is going down, and that's what a lot of my clients and other passengers thought. They thought they might be sending, for example, their last text messages ever.
I think it's hard for us to understand just how loud, how violent this was. I know that there were reports of a woman with a little boy, and the shirt was ripped off of his back with the force here. Mark, from the research you've done on this incident, how much worse could this have been?
Oh, if this plane was basically a ticking time bomb, if the plane had depressurized at a higher altitude, such as cruising altitude, it would have been catastrophic. In a matter of seconds, the oxygen is sucked out of the plane. Hypoxia sets in. Your pilot easily could lose consciousness. The structural damage to the plane might be irredeemable. Chances are everybody dies, and we're having a whole different conversation.
Thankfully, it never got that far, but truly to know that it could have reached that far, utterly horrific. Now, a bit off topic, but I spoke to my dad. My dad, for anyone that doesn't know, is an aircraft engineer at British Airways, and I was talking to him about this situation when it first happened back in January, and he was like, in my entire career, he's been at British Airways since he was 17, he's now 52, so however long that is, or 16, he's been there since, but regardless, he was like, in his entire career, he's never known anything like this to ever happen. And, he's even said that there's been, issues with Boeing, backlogged issues where even, the airlines are feeling the knock-on effect, like British Airways and other airlines that they all use Boeing. So, they're feeling the knock-on effects, and the pressure is building on Boeing because these airlines are requiring these parts, so the pressure is piling onto the airline, which is then they're piling the pressure onto Boeing, and then the Boeing are piling the pressure onto their workforce to pump these out the door. It's a domino effect, to be fair. But the entire situation got even more insane when a Boeing whistleblower, John Barnett, was found dead in the US. Now, John Barnett came out to kind of expose Boeing for, Boeing at the time were like, on the surface, they were like, everything's fine. Yes, this was an issue, we're looking into it. But John came out and he was like, no, things are not fine. There are structural issues. You are cutting corners to try and maximize income and try and get stuff out the door. John Barnett, he worked for Boeing for more than 30 years before retiring in 2017. And in the days before his death, he had been given evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company. Boeing said they were saddened to hear of Mr. Barnett's passing. The Charleston County coroner confirmed that his death to the BBC on Monday. It said that the 62-year-old man had died from, quote, self-inflicted wound on the 9th of March, and the police were investigating. Mr. Barnett had worked for the US plane giant for more than 3 decades until his retirement in 2017 on health grounds. From 2010, he was employed as a quality manager at the North Charleston plant, and the facility builds the 787 Dreamliner, and the state-of-the-art airliner mainly on long-haul routes. And in 2019, Mr. Barnett told the BBC that under-pressure workers had been deliberately fitting substandard parts to aircraft on the production line. So you can see where the corner cutting was taken part because of the severe pressure that they were under. He also said that he had uncovered serious problems with the oxygen systems, which could mean 1 in 4 breathing masks would not work in an emergency. So we saw there was a severe emergency back in January. 1 in 4 of those masks, so you've got to think a row of seats is about 4, maybe 3. So let's say for argument's sake, an easy math, there's 4. You've got 2 sets of rows of seats at 4 passengers each. At least one person per row doesn't have a functional air mask, which is horrific because in that kind of situation, that could be the difference between life and death. He said soon after starting work in South Carolina, he had become concerned that the push to get new aircraft built meant the assembly process was rushed and safety was compromised, something the company denied. He later told the BBC that workers failed to follow procedures intended to track components through the factory, allowing defective components to go missing. He said in some cases, substandard parts had even been removed from scrap bins and fitted to planes that were being built to prevent delays in the production line. People were literally, because of severe pressure, getting stuff out of the scrap bin, fitting it onto the parts just to get it pumped out the door, to get it along the production line. He also claimed that tests on emergency oxygen systems due to be fitted to the 787 showed failure rate of 25%, meaning that 1 in 4 could fail to deploy in a real-life emergency. Mr. Barnett said that he had alerted managers to his concerns, but no action had been taken. Bear in mind, this was back in 2019 that he told the BBC, but back in 2010, he became the quality manager. So from 2010 until present day, these issues have been there. So they've been there for over a decade, almost a decade and a half, and nothing's been done about it. Boeing denied the assertions. However, in 2017, review by the US regulator, the Federal Aviation Administration, did uphold some of Mr. Barnett's concerns. So he was backed by this administration, the FAA. It established that the location of at least 53 non-conforming parts in the factory was unknown and that they were considered lost. Boeing was ordered to take remedial action. On the oxygen cylinders used issue, the company said that in 2017 it had identified some oxygen bottles received from the supplier were not deploying properly, but it denied that any of them were actually fitted on the aircraft. What a shock. After retiring, he embarks on a long-running legal action against the company. Anyway, it goes on like that. So you can see some of the hugely glaring issues that were raised by John Barnett back in 2019 until present day. Now, this whole thing with his death is, incredibly sad, becomes even more scrutinized or kind of under the microscope when you look at this letter that was sent by John to one of his close friends. So a week before his death, Boeing whistleblower John Barnett told a friend, "No, I ain't scared, but if anything happens to me, it's not suicide." I know that he did not commit, well, the friend went on to say, "I know he did not commit suicide," said Jennifer, a friend of Barnett's. "There's no way." The first amended complaint filed to the United States Department of Labor, Officer of Administrative Law Judges, case court case John against the Boeing Company in South Carolina, heard the subject of depositions. During this, former Boeing quality control manager, now whistleblower, is a plaintiff, and plaintiff in the case died of a gunshot wound to the head. So, long story short, John comes out to the BBC. He's got this long-running legal case, and he whistleblows. He blows the whistle on all of these issues. Back in January, the issues occur. John's like, "Told you so." And then he's told days before he blew the whistle to his friends, "If I die, I did not commit suicide, just know that." And then days later, he's found dead. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Here's a little video though that was found, and it sheds a lot of light on the entire situation.
Just when you thought flights this year couldn't get any crazier, a former Boeing employee who was giving evidence in a whistleblower lawsuit against the company was found dead yesterday from a self-inflicted wound. You see, John Barnett had worked as a quality manager for Boeing for 32 years, but after he retired in 2017, he embarked on long-running legal action against the company, accusing them of many shocking things, but just some include cutting corners and rushing the construction of their planes, and deliberately fitting substandard parts parts that compromised safety. And if you've been watching my channel at all this year, you know that there are no shortages of faulty Boeing planes right now. Al Jazeera even made a documentary in 2014 where they got a Boeing employee to go undercover and ask his colleagues if they would fly on the planes that they were building. And out of 15 people, 10 said no. A lot of people don't realize that Boeing is not just an airplane manufacturer. They also sell satellites, rockets, and even weapons like missiles and military aircraft worldwide. They are the 4th largest defense contractor in the world, and they are the single largest exporter in the entire USA by dollar value. Protesters even tried to block Boeing facilities supplying weapons to Israel in November. Anyway, tangent aside, John accused the company of denigrating his character and hampering his career because of the issues he pointed out. And then, just last week, he gave a formal deposition in which he was questioned by Boeing's lawyers, and he had been due to undergo further questioning on Saturday. But when he didn't turn up, inquiries were made and he was subsequently found dead in his truck in his hotel car park. Boeing commented, saying that it was saddened to hear of Mr. Barnett's passing.
There you go. I mean, that literally sums it up in an absolute nutshell, but you can see how deep this whole thing runs. And this was an interview that John made shortly before his passing.
It's not a 737 problem, it's a Boeing problem. When I first started working at Charleston, I was in charge with pushing back defects to our suppliers. I'd take a group of inspectors and actually go to the supplier and inspect their product before they sent it in. Well, I'd taken a team of 4 inspectors to Spirit Aerosystems to inspect the 41 section before they sent it to Charleston. And we found 300 defects. Some of them were significant that needed engineering intervention. When I returned to Charleston, my senior manager told me that we had found too many defects and he was going to take the next trip. So the next trip he went on, he took 2 of my inspectors. And when they got back, they were given accolades for only finding 50 defects. So I pulled that inspector aside and I said, did Spirit really clean up their act that quick? That don't sound right. And she was mad. She said, no. Said the 2 inspectors were given 2 hours to inspect the whole 41 section and they were kicked off the airplane.
It's utterly horrific, you know, the whole situation. And under, you know, severe scrutiny, obviously, you've got planes going horrifically wrong that could cause life-threatening issues, wheels falling off the plane, doors being ripped off its hinges mid-air. And then you've got a whistleblower found dead, who's kind of, you know, scrutinized your company, brought you into question and is like, look, things are not okay. Well, how do the leadership manage that situation? How do the CEO of Boeing and top line managers deal with the situation? Well, they do what all great managers do. They resign. They literally handed in their notice, and by the end of the year, they will be stepping down from their roles at Boeing and leaving. What? No. What the hell, man? Look, this is the interview that they did with CNBC. It's blood boiling.
Why now? And was this completely your decision?
Yeah, first of all, 100%. Why now? I've entered my 5th year. At the end of this year, I'll be close to 68 years old. I've always said to the board, and the board has been very prepared, I would give them plenty of notice so that they could understand and plan succession in regular order. And that's what this is about. It's me giving them notice that at the end of this year, I plan to retire. And then
because I can't handle the heat that is coming right now with my planes being absolutely tit-shaped and my staff being so pressured that they are using scraps from a bin to fit on their planes, and also the fact that it's looming over my head that someone who spoke out about my company mysteriously wound up dead. That's why I'm leaving. But no, I'm going to sugarcoat it with, I'm giving plenty of notice because my time has come. No, you can't handle the heat.
And then them taking the actions that they've taken. I'm actually very proud of the way the board has handled everything. Very deliberate. The move with Larry, in my view, very deliberate. The entry of Steve as our new chairman, very deliberate, all very qualified and great decisions.
If you're going to be leaving, some will say, why not just leave now? Why wait until the end of the year?
We have another mountain to climb. Let's not avoid what happened with Alaska Air. Let's not avoid the call for action. Let's not avoid the changes that we have to make in our factory. Let's not avoid the need to slow down a bit and let the supply chain catch up. We got to get at that, just like we got at the rest. And we will get through that. We will get through that. And I've committed myself to the board to do exactly that.
Seriously though, in actual, serious honesty, who wants to take the job of a CEO at Boeing? Yes, they are at the top. They are top dogs. So, you know, people are going to be clambering, foaming at the bit to try and get that job. But when you step back and you look at the job in its entirety, you got to think, you're not just inheriting the title of a CEO at Boeing. You're inheriting all of the problems that are going on right now. And when those problems are resolved, it falls back onto that person. So you got to look at it and you're like, if it were me and I was in that position, I'd seriously take a look at that job and I'd be like, I don't know if I actually want that job, because, you know, I don't want the finger pointed at me for someone winding up dead who spoke out about my company. I don't want the finger pointed at me when countless people's lives are at risk because our supply chains can't handle the demand that we're putting on them. You know, fair play. If they do go on to deal with the issues at hand, absolutely fair play. But until that time, no one wants that job. Seriously, no one wants that job. But, you know, fingers crossed, things do get better. And as horrific as it is, I mean, it should never have got to this point in the first place, but hopefully from things that have gone on, lessons will be learned and, you know, things will change for the better. And hopefully, you know, the planes that we step on to go on holiday to get ourselves, you know, the relax from day-to-day life and from the craziness that is life, hopefully those, you know, we can feel comfortable stepping on those planes knowing they are without a doubt 100% safe and not made with scrap parts that were just found in a bin to try and meet the supply demand. Anyway, got a bit heated there. I'm sorry. I don't usually chime in with my 10 pence worth, but it was infuriating just looking at this entire situation, how the greed of a company can overrule that of, you know, just basic humanity, basic humility. Sorry, I went off on a tangent. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. And while you're down there, if you have gone on to enjoy this video, be sure to jump together the hell out of that like button, subscribe if you're new, and tickle my little bell so you get notified whenever we upload. And until next time, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed. Cannot wait to see you in the next one, and I'll speak to you later. Peace.